George Jackson, age 29, California Adult Authority inmate A63837. Imprisoned January 12, 1960. Offense, second-degree robbery.
Mrs. Jackson, how long has your son been in prison?
Since 1961.
And how did that all start?
No, he was with a fellow who arrived at a service station in Los Angeles. They were in his old car together, and according to a witness, a young man who worked at the filling station, he said that this man came in with a gun and robbed him, that he didn't see my son at all. This witness was at the courthouse the morning that they had the trial, the so-called trial, the hearing, the morning that the judge sent him to state prison with an indeterminate sentence. You know, that means that he can go there and stay 12 years before they decide how long they want to sentence him to stay. In the meantime, he's waiting there for the board to decide the number of years they want him to stay in prison.
Convicted of stealing $72 from a petrol station, Jackson had a juvenile record. He was advised to plead guilty to get a lighter sentence.
Sentence 1 year to life. Term served 11 years, 7 months, 7 years in solitary confinement.
1 to life means the convict is eligible for parole each year, subject to the judgment of a parole board. Jackson was refused parole 8 times.
January 1970. Charged with the murder of a prison guard. Future, if convicted, death row.
With 2 fellow prisoners, Jackson allegedly killed a prison guard in reprisal for the shooting of other convicts. The 3, George Jackson, Fleta Drumgo, and John Cliché, became known as the Soledad brothers.
For 10 years, Jackson read and wrote constantly. Prison was his school. His letters were collected and published in a book. For him, the oppression and humiliation, the frustration and the violence of the prison system were but a reflection of what it was like to be a black man outside in American society. Prison made George Jackson a revolutionary. Violence he saw as the only instrument of change. Overnight, his letters made him an idol of the left and a respected literary figure.
The letters to my family, my mother, my father, sisters, my brother, Jonathan, they were intended to familiarize them with the situation I was faced with here. Of course, here in prison, we see the repression, the exploitation, the victimization of lower class peoples.
Jackson's political education was aided by one of those strange liberal quirks in California law which allows a prisoner mental, if not physical, freedom. Any book, revolutionary or otherwise, that the prisoner requires, the prison authorities are bound to let him have. Isn't one of the ironies that you can lock someone up for a long period of time and yet to give him access to any revolutionary material he requires? Thereby, don't you create a revolutionary?
If we put a man in a cell, and by his nature of his acting out, we are required to keep him in his cell, then we feed him all the revolutionary works, and George Jackson had, I guess, 100 or more revolutionary works. Of course it gives him nothing else to think about. He's not concerned about bettering himself. He's only looking forward to the day when he can get out and become a true revolutionary.
The violence that had been building up suddenly erupted at this prison a year last January. In a racial brawl, 3 black prisoners were shot down and killed by a white guard in a gun tower. A few days later, a white guard was murdered in retaliation. 3 black prisoners were charged with the killing. The prison was Soledad, and the accused became known as the Soledad brothers. George Jackson was regarded as being the ringleader.
Was the incident for which you're charged now, was it a revolutionary act on your part?
You're asking me to confess to something?
Unless you want to, did you kill the man?
Look, one of the most important elements of guerrilla warfare is to maintain secrecy. I've killed nobody until, it's been proven. And they'll never be able to prove anything like that.
Legal proceedings seemed to drag on endlessly, getting nowhere. In anger and frustration, George Jackson's 17-year-old brother Jonathan walked into the Marin County Courthouse where 3 black prisoners from San Quentin were on trial. He threw them some guns and with their help took the judge, a district attorney and some of the jury hostage in an attempt to ransom his brother. In the shootout with the police that followed, the judge, 2 black prisoners and Jonathan Jackson were killed.
My son Jonathan was murdered over in San Marin, Marin County or wherever it is. I took him to Illinois to bury him. Before I could get him to the cemetery, the FBI had opened the casket and disarranged his body to the extent where it couldn't be viewed by his aunts and uncles and his cousins who came to see him to show their respect for him.
Why did they do that?
I don't know why they did it, unless they were looking for Angela Davis in the casket. I knew my son better than anybody, and I know that he wouldn't let anybody tell him what to do unless he wanted to do it himself. Tired of reading the accounts of what he was thinking and how he wanted to commit suicide and all these things. I'm tired of reading about it. I'm tired of people telling what he was when people didn't even know him. How do they know what he was? He was a gentle person. He was always gentle and kind. And he liked people. And he never felt that people didn't like him.
Why did Jonathan do what he did?
I think he did it for love. The love of his brother and also love of his country. I think he probably, I try not to analyze him because nobody knows what he was thinking except Jonathan. But I think he did it for love of his brother and his country. He was trying to wake the people in this country up to the fact that black people had nothing. You have nothing in this country. And he was trying to illustrate this to the people. That's what I think.
First to know if there was, I'm saying that there was no conspiracy, that Jonathan, a 17-year-old man-child, was working according to the dictates of his own mind.
The guns that Jonathan Jackson used were shown to belong to Angela Davis, a black Marxist university professor whose political views had already involved her in clashes with the California establishment. She'd become a leading figure in the campaign to free George Jackson, and it was said George's brother Jonathan had become her bodyguard. A nationwide manhunt followed, and Angela Davis was put on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. Several months later, with hair cut off and glasses changed, she was arrested in New York and sent back to California to stand trial. Trial proceedings started at the Marin County Courthouse where the shooting had taken place. Angela Davis was very close to George Jackson. They were more than just revolutionary comrades. Some of the most intimate letters in Jackson's book had been addressed to her. Some of the letters that George wrote you are not revolutionary tracts, but they're love letters in almost the romantic sense. How close were you to George?
Well, we were very close, both as revolutionary comrades and also in a personal sense.
How in a personal sense? How did you get to know each other?
The first time I met him was on the occasion of one of the court appearances in Salinas, California. I had not really expected the scene that confronted me when I walked into that courtroom and sat down and saw coming into the courtroom 3 black men who were chained and shackled. I had never seen black men before with chains all over their bodies. It was certainly reminiscent of slavery. And in spite of the fact that they were completely suppressed in a physical sense, you could see from the attitude and their demeanor when they entered the courtroom that they were not for a moment going to resign themselves to that situation, that they were that they had a very profound fighting spirit, and it was that which really affected me very strongly.
A few weeks ago, on August the 21st, at San Quentin Prison, George Jackson was killed, 2 days before his trial was finally due to begin. This is what the prison authorities say happened on that day. Stephen Bingham, a radical young attorney, came to visit Jackson and passed through a metal detector like this, which bleeped. His briefcase was searched and found to contain a tape recorder. Hidden inside it, say the authorities, was a gun like this. Bingham was also alleged to have smuggled in an afro wig, under which Jackson was to hide the gun to get it back to his cell. Exactly what happened inside that block in the next 20 minutes, only a few people know, and most of them are dead. What we do know is that 25 prisoners were released. Then 3 white guards and 2 white inmates were killed. 2 of them had bullet wounds. All of them had their throats cut, with a razor blade embedded in a toothbrush. The alarm was sounded. Jackson ran out of the block and back across the courtyard, gun in hand. The authorities say he was shot twice, in the legs and through the head. He fell here and died, making for this wall 50 yards away and 25 feet high. That's the official version of Jackson's death. It raises several questions. I saw Jackson's body shortly after the shooting. I saw more wounds than the 2 that the authorities had stated. This week the pathologist finally published his report. Jackson, he said, was shot in the back. The bullet travelled upwards and out through the top of his head. This conflicts with the authorities' story. But yesterday, San Quentin still maintained that Jackson was shot from above, from a gun tower. Who killed George Jackson?
I don't know. I don't know by name, and I wouldn't tell you if I did.
I raised my children to love people. I raised them to mingle in American society, but American society didn't want them.
Do you think that George's death was inevitable, given the kind of things he was saying and writing?
They couldn't let him live. Wouldn't be any way possible for them to let him live. He's a black man. They're afraid that people will begin to listen, and they had. People all over the world had begun to listen to George, and I certainly know the people in this country had. That's the reason why they framed him to be murdered the way he was, to try to discredit everything that he had said, to try to paint him as an insane maniac, an animal. That was the reason for it.
Could he be violent?
Only if people were violent to him. I can be violent also, and I imagine so can you. You see, that's the whole story of America. They take their violence and turn it back around on somebody else. I don't have to talk about American violence. You can look all over the world and see American soldiers everywhere fighting in other people's countries and killing them. So if I were running the country in America, I wouldn't open my mouth about violence. As many people as they've murdered in Vietnam in the past 10 years, and they're going to talk about violence. As many black people that get killed every day in this country and nobody knows or cares, and they're going to tell me about violence. How they wiped out a whole nation of Indians, and they're going to say something to me about violence. I don't want to hear it.
Revolutionaries like yourself and George Jackson have to die.
I mean, this is something that we realize as black people. It might possibly happen to any one of us, and especially if we have made it clear that we are going to continue to struggle no matter what the circumstances are. George certainly is a symbol, but he made very, very profound and very, very concrete contributions to the black liberation struggle in this country. Thousands, millions perhaps, of people who have read his book have seen articulated in this book the frustrations and the desires that black people have had for hundreds of years in this country.
George says to us, "Arise and walk. Silver and gold have I none, but I give you what I have. In the name of Jesus of Nazareth, I say, rise up and walk. In the name of Denmark Vesey of Charleston, South Carolina, I say, rise up and walk. In the name of the Reverend Nat Turner of Southampton County, Virginia, I say, rise up and walk. In the name of Frederick Douglass, in the name of W.B. Du Bois, I say, rise up and walk. In the name of my brother, Jonathan Jackson, in the name of James McLean, in the name of William Christmas, in the name of Angela Davis, and in the name of George Jackson, I say, rise up and walk.
I know.